Everything just went bang. It seemed like hell broke loose. I really thought that plane was going to fall in half. Lights were in the ceiling, came down, hitting people on the head. People who didn't have their seatbelts on were falling. And glasses, phones, everything was just flying through the air. I thought, we're not going to get out of this.
The Singapore Airlines flight was passing over the south of Myanmar when severe turbulence hit. A 73-year-old man died and more than 100 people were injured. Beverly Mayers was physically unscathed, but it wasn't until she was flying back to Australia 14 hours later that the ordeal sunk in.
And I'd slept for about 2 hours and I woke up absolutely bawling my eyes out. I couldn't stop, and then the whole lot went over again in my head, and that was happening every 2 hours. And every time we hit a little bit of turbulence on the plane, you could see the people who'd been on that plane pulling the seatbelts tight. And then when I've got home, that's all I was sleeping was 2 hours, and I'd wake up in the same condition, just crying and crying.
A week on, the 81-year-old says she's now settled in back home.
So I've been on the beach, I've been walking by the river, I've been out with my friends, and I think that's what's grounded me now. All the family came over and it was just group hugs and it was so good. I've got a 14-year-old grandson who, gangling, lovely boy, and he just kept hugging and saying, nothing happened to my dad. But he was just beautiful. Yeah, it was lovely.
Preliminary findings released by investigators overnight reveal the plane likely flew near a developing thunderstorm. This caused unexpected and rapid changes in acceleration, and many passengers were flung into the air and violently thrown back down again. The aircraft plunged 54 metres in less than 5 seconds. The incident forced the London to Singapore flight to make an emergency landing in Bangkok.
So this time of year it is the active monsoon period for that region of Asia and the Bay of Bengal. There was more thunderstorm activity there at that time than there was a few days earlier, for example.
Investigators have extracted the data from the plane's black box and suggest the airplane hit what's known as convective turbulence.
Two types we generally come across as pilots are clear air turbulence, and that's associated frequently with jet streams that occur near the poles at each end of the planet. Or the other form of turbulence we frequently come across is what pilots refer to as convective turbulence, and that will normally be associated with thunderstorms or other sorts of cloud activity.
Tony Lucas has been a pilot with Qantas for nearly 3 decades and is the president of the Australian and International Pilots Association.
So clear air turbulence won't ever show up on our weather radar as the technology stands at the moment, whereas convective turbulence we will be able to see on our weather radar and therefore make plans to try and avoid all of it, or at least the worst of it.
The investigation into what happened with the Singapore Airlines flight is ongoing. On Monday, there was another mid-air incident. A Qatar Airways flight from Doha to Dublin hit turbulence, injuring 12 people.
We're 10 kilometres in the air in an aluminium tube and in a dynamic environment. And so the best of forecasts are only able to give us an indication of what we might come across.
Some recent studies suggest climate change is making clear air turbulence more frequent and severe.
The changes in the global atmospheric winds lead to increases in the strength of the jet stream. And those increases in strength will lead to more likelihood of turbulence.
To manage it, pilots rely on weather forecasts and correspondence with other aircraft on their route to adjust their speed and altitude.
There's been a lot of concern that climate change is going to make air travel unsafe, and I would just say that our ability to avoid turbulence will probably increase at a faster rate than any changes in turbulence due to climate change.
The amount of air traffic around the world has increased significantly, and with a 3 or 4-fold increase in air traffic, of course we're going to have a 3 or 4-fold event of aeroplanes encountering turbulence.
Singapore Airlines will no longer serve hot drinks or meals when the seatbelt sign is on.
There are very few things that are in a passenger's control, but one of the things that is in a passenger's control is the ability to wear their seatbelt when they're seated.
Beverly Mayers had her seatbelt on at the time. She says it saved her life.
Prior to that, I had got up, I would have been gone. Put your seatbelt on, you know, if things are going to fall from the ceiling, they're going to hit you in the head. But if you have your seatbelt on, at least you're compacted into that chair, at least, and you're not going to be flying through the air somewhere.